Let's see, 5:05. All right, I'm going to give another minute. Oh, we're recording it, so you know what? Let's not give another minute. Let's go ahead and get started. So, I'm not sure that that Souley needs an introduction, but I'll give it anyway. So we started this year. Actually, we started last year. I'm going to let Souley do most of the talking. Okay, I see. The idea was for me to work with folks in the Deal Confidence group that we could do joint venture deals together. And I liked the Tulsa market. And so I put a video out in August on how to access tired landlords, how to find them. And Souley took that video and ran with it. And without ever setting foot in Tulsa, and without ever meeting the seller and without ever seeing the house, at least not live, was able to get this thing done. So I will acknowledge and welcome the conquering hero, Souley Hanne, to the stage.
Hey, thank you. I think honestly, I have to give a big shout out to you because obviously it all started because of you. I had no intention of going to Tulsa or marketing in Tulsa. My whole focus was just in Georgia until you got the opportunity to move there, and then you saw how hot the market was, and then just like how you said, that video just really changed everything. So basically, I think I just followed the same exact steps as you showed in that video. And I believe October, I actually started, when I started pulling all the lists, I was sending out text via Google Voice by hand, and that he was interested. So, and that's where everything started.
Okay, so I am going to, because it's a small group, we got about 5 folks here, including the 2 of us. I'm going to propose that people mute themselves until they have a question. But if you have a question, go ahead and throw it out there. I'm going to ask Souley questions, some of the answers to which I know, but some of them I don't. I will ask questions until somebody has a question that they want to ask themselves. Souley, so you use the tired landlord strategy to find these landlords.
Yes.
How did you pick this? Well, let me ask you this question: how many people did you talk to before you got somebody to start talking to you? How many contacts did you have to make?
I believe it was about 37 or so. I would have to go back and check, but it was about 37. So what I did, I would pull the case number. I would also download the affidavit. I would register the address, and I actually even made notes on how much the tenant owes the seller. For example, some of them went up to even $8,000 in rent, which was crazy. Some of them even had the amount of rent and then also plus damages. So I even went to actually record that, and then also I recorded the to see the CARES Act affidavit, where it actually says if the seller property is free and clear or not. And basically, I was doing it by hand. It took a while, but it was well worth it. It was well worth it.
So you said a couple of things that I want to make sure that people catch. It's powerful. Oh, Jermaine got kicked out. Okay. Let's see. Oh, hey, Chad. So one of the reasons why I liked pursuing I wanted to pursue tired landlord in Tulsa is that every county handles evictions differently, and some counties make it really easy to access the data. Some counties make it very, very difficult. Tulsa makes it it's one of the easiest counties I've ever seen to access their data. And their data is very thorough. Some counties don't provide a phone number, they just provide an address, which means you got to skip trace the plaintiff, which is the same as a landlord, and that's expensive and it's time consuming, etc. Tulsa, they provide, they show the actual form that the landlord has to file to submit the request for the eviction lawsuit, and it has their address and it has their phone number. And because the plaintiff, the landlord is dealing with the courts, they don't give them the fake phone number that they might give you or me. They give the actual number because you never know if the court's going to call you. So that number is 99 times out of 100 is the right number to reach them, which is very rare. So they save you all the time and energy of having to skip trace these folks. In addition, there is, and Souley mentioned this, there is a document that a lot of court systems required be filed as part of the eviction that specifies whether the property does or does not fall under the CARES Act. The CARES Act is the legislation that was passed last year to protect homeowners who had mortgages, in some cases federally insured mortgages, from being foreclosed on, for being evicted out for a period of time. The cool thing about this is that paperwork specifies whether or not the landlord has a mortgage on the property or not. So they're basically telling you, do they own it free and clear or do they not own it free and clear? And again, it's a signed affidavit, so they would lie at their own risk. So they have to tell the truth to the court. So they're telling you, if they leave that thing blank, that there's no debt, they're telling you that they own this property free and clear, which is a perfect invitation to start making a seller financed offer. So having all that information available as PDF files that you can download makes the Tulsa tired landlord process the simplest and the easiest that I've ever seen. You're never going to see anything easier than that. Plus, Tulsa has a website that lets you access information about a property all in one place. You can put in an address and it'll tell you the taxes. It'll show you a map of the lot. It'll show you the deed, some of the deed information. It'll show you the appraisal. I mean, it basically lays everything out there right for you in one convenient place. It's custom made for investors, and that's rare. So Souley's point that you can pull up and see how far back the eviction was filed. I think the one that you found, Souley, they originally tried to file in August, and then it got dismissed.
Yep.
And so they refiled in September or October, one of those two.
September.
But that means, because we can see all the data there, we could see that Souley could see that it had been August, if not before, that this landlord had gotten paid. So you can see all that information, and that's gold, because when you get ready to approach the landlord, you know in many cases how far behind they are, how long it's been since they got paid, and it makes making a deal that much easier, because you can say, oh, I can see that you haven't gotten paid in 8 months. I saw one for $10,000 a couple of weeks ago, and I'm like, that person needs to not be in the landlord business. They need to be rescued from themselves, because they're not making any money. And even if they found a tenant tomorrow, they wouldn't be able to recover from $10,000 in the hole of no mortgage payment. So, of no rent payment, I should say. Anyway, so you 40-ish, 1 out of 40 or 37, it took you to get to, which is, what is that, better than 2%, which is still pretty darn good. And it just cost you time. You didn't have to skip trace anything. You didn't have to, what tool did you use to, no, let's back up. How did you reach out to the landlords? Did you call them? Did you text them?
I just sent the text. I said, hey, Paul, my name is Souley Hanne. I am a Georgia resident looking to move to Tulsa, Oklahoma. I wanted to see if you'd be interested in selling your house. And that's how the conversation started.
So for those of you who are wondering how you can reach out to these folks, that's it. That's it. Now, it is not necessarily the case that everybody's going to have a phone number that supports text. So if you have some of the older people who may not have a text plan, that may not get through, and you may not know that it's not getting through. But that message is what got Paul to call you back, Souley?
Yep.
So
he texted me back. We started talking about it. I think even when I got the deal under contract, we actually didn't even speak on the phone once. It was all through text. It was very quick. It was all through text. And when I was finding out more about him, that's when I started. That's when I brought you in on it, and then that's when I realized, yeah, he's actually a bad landlord because of his systems, the way he did things. You know, I like to say that he kind of put himself in this situation because he did not do his due diligence on the tenant. She was, and again, maybe we could get to that later, but she basically she was a headache to him. So that was even more motivation for him to, get rid of the property and sell it.
Do you remember off the top of your head, did the eviction notice that he filed, did it indicate how much money he wanted?
I do not remember. I would have to pull the spreadsheet out. I would have to
no
pull the
worries.
spreadsheet, yeah.
But a lot of landlords don't even bother putting a figure there. They just want the tenant gone. They just want them out and property back. So you may not get a specific number. From the time you sent the very first text message, Souley, to the time you got a response from somebody, how long did it take you?
I believe it was about a day after. After I sent him a text, yeah.
So immediate, pretty much immediate.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
And then you mentioned you texted this guy up until the point where you got the purchase and sale agreement. So you didn't have to get on the phone. You didn't have to,
Nope. At first, he wanted, at first he was claiming that the bank did an appraisal on it. It came out at 80,000, and I believe I just talked to him out of not taking 80,000. I just told him, hey, I really want this deal, but 80,000, it's going to be a little bit, difficult to do. So can you meet me in the middle? So we started negotiating until he went down to 64,000, and he finally agreed. And I said, okay, yeah, let's get this thing rolling. Yep.
Cool. At any point, did he ask you how many deals you'd done before?
Nope.
Okay. So, and again, I ask this question because I get this all the time. People go, oh, well, I haven't done any deals and I don't want to call any seller because they may ask me how many deals I've done. The seller doesn't care how many deals you've done. The seller has their own problems. This is a seller who had a tenant that wasn't paying them for months, actually two tenants that weren't paying him for months. He hadn't seen the inside of the property for, I don't know how long. And so he just wanted them gone. And so he didn't care how many deals you had done. He didn't ask you, are you a Tulsa resident? Are you a native?
Nope.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
And I feel like I had a Georgia phone number for my Google Voice phone number, but I set it at the very front. Like when I sent my text, hey, I'm a Georgia resident, but I'm moving to Tulsa. So that kind of eliminates them having to ask the question if I'm legit or not,
Yep.
Saves the time. Yep.
So you used a Georgia number. It wasn't an issue. He didn't say, why aren't you a Tulsa native? And so, because I think people have this idea that if they get these folks on the phone, they're going to interrogate them and embarrass them and ask them questions that they can't answer. When the truth of the matter is, they're the ones with the problem, right? I mean, we're solving their problem. He's filing eviction because his tenant's not paying it. He's asking the court for help. So, if the landlord starts to get uncomfortable or unpleasant, we can help somebody else. We don't have to help everybody that we're talking to, but these people, everybody on that list needs help. That's why they filed for eviction in the first place. So, no one asked about credentials. No one said, did you ever take a course in this? No one said how many years you've been doing this or how many houses do you have? None of that stuff matters. So it's not just me saying this. This is Souley. I didn't pay him to say this. No one cares. No one cares. Did he ask you about your website?
No.
Well,
no website.
People say, "Oh, well, I gotta get a website up before I can call it." I'm like, someone doesn't care about your website. Business card? Did he ask you about business cards?
Nope.
So I'm belaboring the point because I want people to hear that Souley found the information. Souley sent him sounds like 1-line, 2-line text, and the next day the guy called him back. Why did the guy call him back? Did he call him back because Souley's a great guy? Well, Souley is a great guy, but he didn't know that. The guy called him back because he had a problem that he needed to get solved, and he was motivated to talk to somebody who he thought could solve the problem. And he didn't care about a website. He didn't look him up probably didn't even bother looking him up on LinkedIn or Facebook. He just responded to the message. Now, I'm not saying that every seller is going to be like this, but I'm telling you that none of the sellers that you're talking to care one bit about you having a website. They don't care how many years you've been doing this. They don't care how much money you have in the bank. Did he ask you for proof of funds, Souley?
Nope. No, he did not. And honestly, I even put it $100 EMD on the contract. He did not ask for a dime. He just wanted to get it sold.
He wants relief. And that's why I love tired landlords, is because they just want to get out. And if you can help them get out quickly, then you're their new best friend. Was he difficult to talk? Well, you didn't talk to him until after you had the contract signed. So you were just texting back and forth. Was it hard to get information out of him? Was he?
Sometimes he wasn't always very straightforward. You know, I think he lacks communication. So that's what I sense. That's another issue being a landlord. If you lack that communication, you're going to be in trouble. You know, so he didn't have that communication between him and his tenant. For some reason, I don't know why. You know, it's bad. But for some stuff, I would have to constantly, repeatedly ask him, hey, can you provide this and that, you know, just for him to be able to actually provide it. But to me, that just actually shows how serious I am. If I have to ask you twice again, it just shows how serious I am to getting this done and solving your problem.
Yep. And the harder they are to do business with, the better, because most people will give up. They'll ask it once and say, oh, well, I guess he's not interested. And no, he just had bad systems. He just had bad follow-up system. So, okay, so you text him. A day later, he texts you back. You text him some more. Did you send him so you did this through electronic signature document. So you didn't send him a piece of paper that he had to physically sign. You sent him an e-sign, like DocuSign. I think he used HelloSign, which is completely free. So free. Yeah. So my marketing dollars on this was completely free. Yeah. So a little bit of your time, admittedly, but in terms of hard cost, there were no hard costs. You didn't need Deal Machine or PropStream to find them, because it's publicly available data. You didn't need to skip trace him because his phone number was right there. And you didn't need a VA to go reach out to him, because you contacted those first 37 yourself. He responded. Now, of the 37, just kind of go back to that briefly. Did anybody else of the 37 respond back?
Someone else did respond back, and I need to follow up with them. He's kind of been, you know, at first he said yes, he would sell it, and then he's like, hold off on it. So he's kind of, you know, I wouldn't say he's not motivated, but I definitely keep him on my follow-up list. Yep.
Because the fortune is in the follow-up.
And honestly, I think I feel like I could have had more deals if I just consistently followed up with all of them. I think some of them I did not follow up with. And of course, doing everything by hand, I should have been more organized, but I definitely feel like I could have gotten more than 3 deals out of that list for sure. Cool.
So, and it's not too late. I mean, the cool thing about this is that, you know, bad landlords or tired landlords don't typically get unbad or untired. They only get worse typically. So if you're a bad landlord in January, you're still a bad landlord in March. And just because you solved the immediate problem, maybe they went to court, they got the tenant out and they put somebody else in, they're still a bad landlord. I mean, they still have no systems. They're still, they're going to do the same thing they did with the last tenant with this tenant. And so it's only a matter of time before they have the same issue over again. That's why follow-up is so important. And that's why having a CRM is so critical, because being able to go back to somebody that you spoke to a year ago or 6 months ago and be able to pull up all the conversations you had with them, that's priceless. I mean, I can't tell you how much money I've made just being able to go back and remind people of conversations that we had years ago. So you sent them the agreement electronically. They signed it. How you sent it, and how long after you sent it did they sign it?
I believe it was about, at first, I didn't realize that his wife, I completely forgot that his wife was on the deed itself. So when I first sent it, I think it took him 2 days to actually sign it. And that's when, after I was communicating with you, and then that's when we realized that, hey, oh yeah, his wife needs to be on the deed. So I sent it to him again, and I think it took him about 3 or 4 days for both of them to actually sign it. And I think he was a little bit hesitant on the contract. There was a little bit of back and forth. There were some things he did not like. Also, he wanted us to take on the tenant. He was completely done with the tenant. So he wanted us to kind of take on that problem, and we agreed. So, but it took a little bit, about 3 or 4 days or so, for him to actually sign it and get it sent to title.
So he signed it, his wife signs it. Now you have a valid agreement.
Yep.
And in theory, at least, you could, up until that point, you could have kept it yourself. You didn't have to wholesale it. You could have said, you know, this is a great deal. I'm going to close on it and keep it and put a tenant in myself, and I'm good to go. That's an option. And so nothing that we've said so far would have prevented you from keeping this property. But you decided, and I agreed, that it'd be great to be able to turn this into cash quickly, if we could, learn the market. It happened to be in a part of Tulsa called Owen Park, which is an up and coming part of Atlanta. It's actually Tulsa. It's 5 minutes from where I live. Actually, in the nice part of Tulsa. I don't live in the nice part. So you and I decided that we were going to JV this one and try to make it available to an investor to buy. But we had a challenge, which was that it turns out it had 2 tenants on the lease, on the lease, because again, the landlord didn't have a written lease. That's how bad a landlord he was. But we wanted to be able to see inside the property so that we could figure out what was going on inside, how much repair work it would need. And we tried to approach the tenants to get access. How did that work out for us?
It did not work out very well, I would say. I think the conversation went on months and months of her just, at first we had some luck actually trying to communicate with her. I finally got a hold of her, and she, you know, I listened to her. I understand what her pain was. I understand what her situation was. I offered her a solution that would have worked very well for her, but for some reason she did not take that route.
So we agreed. So here's the situation: we have a tenant that's not 2 tenants actually that aren't paying rent. We have a landlord that is, one could argue, not maintaining the property properly. So you could argue that both parties are at fault. However, you have a landlord who has filed eviction and would probably have rather died than pay the tenant any money since they're not getting paid. You have a tenant that thinks that their landlord is a slumlord and probably would have rather died than pay any more rent money. So you have this kind of this standoff. Great thing about it is we're a third party. We're a neutral third party. We're not on the tenant's side. We're not on the landlord's side. We're just there trying to see if we can make this deal happen. So it gives us the ability to go in, as we attempted, and Souley approach the tenant, say, hey, look, we don't know. We're not trying to get in the middle of between you and your landlord. Maybe your landlord's a jerk, who knows? We just want to be able to see the inside of the property to see, is this thing trashed or is it in pretty decent shape? Because if it's destroyed on the inside, that's going to change our numbers, and we may have to make adjustments to how much we can sell this thing for. And we couldn't get the tenant to let us get access to see inside. We tried to bribe the tenant with, I think it was $50 gifts. I think it was $50 each. We're trying to, or maybe $25. We tried to bribe them. Hey, just let us see the inside. Just let us schedule a walkthrough so that we can get some people in there. Had they said yes, we'll let you see inside. At no point was Souley going to get on an airplane and fly to Tulsa to show this house. At no point was I going to show this house. We were going to do exactly what we just did a couple of days ago on another property, which is we were going to say to the residents, hey, look, we're going to have, you give us an hour on a Saturday, and we're going to have 5, 6, 7, 8 people come by your house, take a look inside, and see it. And if you let us do that, we'll pay you $50. And if they had agreed to that, that's how we would have seen the inside. And the people that would come inside and take a look would be local investors who are already in Tulsa, who want to be able to see the inside of the property. We would have scheduled them to do this walkthrough, but neither Souley nor I would have been there, would have needed to be there. And we could have had that happen with us any place in the world. And in fact, we did exactly that a couple of days ago on another property. So I want people to hear that someone asked me today, you know, are you advising people to fly to move to Tulsa? No, you don't have to move to Tulsa. You're going to stay exactly where you are. You're going to let the tenant, in this case, well, in this case, there was a tenant in the property, so we were going to let the tenant show the property to our prospective investors, and we were going to pay them $50 bribe for them to do that. And if you schedule it right and you have one big group showing, you only need maybe one or two of these. I typically don't like to have more than 10 people or so in the house at a time. So if you got 20 people who want to see it, okay, you got to do two. But if you're showing the house to 20 individual people, odds are pretty good that at least one or two or three of them are going to say, yes, I want the property. So you may not have to do more than the first 10. But however you do it, the point is that you can show properties without physically being in the property, because Souley was never set foot in this property. And I only set foot in it to put a lockbox on it and show a couple of people. So the how to get under contract, we talked about a free tool called Hello Sign. DocuSign isn't free, but it's the same concept. Once it's signed, we try to work with the existing occupant so that they could give us access to see the inside. They weren't having it, so we had to go to plan B, which was to wait them out, because they were going to lose eventually. And in January, as I recall, is when we didn't have to bribe them out. They actually moved out on their own steam. We actually were prepared to buy them out. If we close on this deal, Mr. or Ms. Tenant, we'll pay you guys just to be out by the time we close this thing. We couldn't get them to go for that either. I think they were afraid that if we saw the inside of the property, it would count against them. And what they didn't realize is that we didn't care what the property looked like, because when we finally saw it, they did kind of trash it a little bit, but we wouldn't have cared. We just wanted to be able to see the inside. So Souley, pick up. So we in January, the tenant moves out. We're still under contract, and you arranged for the agreement to be amended so that our due diligence period wouldn't begin until till we could lay eyes on the actual property, till we had access.
Yes.
Why do that?
Because what was the question? You said you arrange.
Yeah, we arranged to have, under normal circumstances, you might have due diligence be 15 days. You signed the contract back in what, September, October?
November.
Okay, so yes. Signed it in November. Now it's January.
Because it was a new contract we had to do because of his wife.
My wife.
Yes.
Got it. So new contract in November, but even if you had asked for a month of due diligence, that would have put you sometime in December. Here we are in January. How did you get them to hold off? How'd you get to still have due diligence time, even though they didn't move out until sometime in January?
Because I think we told Paul that we would need more time to be able to actually get this close done. So I reassured him that we are ready to close this deal, but we would need more time. So that's when he actually just filed for eviction for the tenant to get out. And then once we sent that amendment, that gave us a lot more time. And I believe that was going to end March, actually 3 weeks from today. So that gave us time. Once the seller was out, we had full access to the property. Once the tenant, we had full access to the property to do everything we'll be able to do. And that amendment still gave us plenty of time, because our due diligence still had, I believe, 5 business days left. We had 15 business days due diligence from where the tenant actually left until we would close the property.
Perfect. So tenant moves out. We still have time to do our due diligence. The owner did a little bit of cleanup and then provided a key. We obtained a lockbox, took the key, put it in a lockbox, set the combination, set it on the front of the house so that people could get access to it. Now, I happen to have done that part, but the truth of the matter is we could have paid, a neighborhood kid or somebody with a car to do the exact same thing for $25 or less. So I didn't have to be there for that, but I was there. So what the heck? I bought a lockbox from Home Depot, put the key in it, set the combination, put it on the front fence, and then we scheduled. There were, as I recall, 2 inspections that I did myself, where they arranged for an appointment with Souley for a specified time. I forget what the time was, 10 o'clock, noon, whatever. And then I met them at the house and got them into the front door, let them take a look around. Then when they were done, I came and locked it up, and then we tried to get their feedback. I did that. I didn't have to do that. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Souley.
No, you're fine. And I think there's one more thing that was really important that you actually mentioned to sign a affidavit purchase agreement and send that to the court, just in case the seller tries to go behind my back to sell it to someone else. Yeah. In that case, because that actually happened once. Well, I think he was just threatening to do that. I don't think it ever happened, because once the tenant was actually out, when he saw the property, he was freaking out. He was very scared. He was trying to figure out how to clean it and things like that. So when he called me, he couldn't even talk correctly. I said, Paul, this is nothing. We'll get it taken care of. So he actually threatened. He said that there was another buyer giving him $6,000 more than what we have under contract for, And I just told him, hey, Paul, I've been honest with you since day one. I'm still honest with you. I'm trying to get this deal done. So why break that honesty? Why break the trust we had? And I think, that kind of calmed him down a little bit. I told him, hey, don't worry about what's in the property. We will clean it. We'll get it taken care of. So I think that helped him actually, so we can continue to pursue the deal.
Absolutely. So your ability to talk him down from the ledge was aided by the fact that you had filed an affidavit of agreement with the county, with Tulsa County, that in theory at least would protect you if you try to go around you. People ask all the time, how do I know that some investor that I give the address to is not going to go straight to the seller and cut me out of the deal? And the way you protect yourself is you file an affidavit. You record an affidavit, which is what Souley did. He signed it, he notarized it, and then he submitted it to the Tulsa County Court. They recorded it. And so the premise behind that theory is if someone were to try to go around us or him and close this deal without us, when they pull title, they would see this affidavit sitting there saying there's a valid contract open on this property, and they go, hey, we got to get this title flaw addressed. And they pick up the phone and call Souley and say, hey, can you clear off this title? And Souley would go, I got a valid contract on this thing. I'll clear it off, but I want my full wholesale fee in exchange for clearing this title flaw, in which case he would get paid. Or they would not try to go around him and he'd be able to close the deal. So either way, the premise behind the affidavit is that it protects you if your investor and your seller try to go behind your back and close the deal without you. Does it happen often? No, but it happens often. It's a piece of paper, right? It costs, what, $14 to record it?
Yep.
So for $14, you're buying yourself an insurance policy against being backstabbed by your investor and your seller. It's the cheapest insurance you'll ever get, and it's just good deal hygiene to protect yourself at all times.
Yeah. So I'm sorry, it was actually $20, but yes,
still,
yeah,
for thousands of dollars to protect thousands of dollars in wholesale fee, it's a small price to pay.
Yes,
and it's a good habit to get into. In general, for any wholesale deal that you're doing, and because the bigger the deal, the more likely people are going to try to go behind your back.
Yep.
So now the property has a lockbox on the front. The code Souley is aware of, and although I did show it twice, after I showed it, I think we left town and went to New York, I think, or somewhere. And you did at least 2 more, probably more like 3 or 4 more. From never leaving or never coming to Tulsa. You did it by phone. You talk people through the lockbox. We talk about how to do that. So you can show houses. So this is a vacant house with a lockbox on it. You can show the house without ever having to physically be there. In fact, there's no value to you being there. They would rather you not be there. So why be there? And the beauty of that approach is that you can show it whenever it's convenient for the investor. Because all you're doing is picking up the phone and calling them and giving them the code and getting it locked up when they're done. So for the record, once you have a team of people, we've done this where it wasn't even me making the phone calls. We had VAs in the Philippines who were doing this for $5 an hour. So there was no, in my opinion, there's no reason for any investor to be showing a vacant house. If it's vacant, put a lockbox on it and have the viewings be done by phone. It costs you 5 minutes to get them in, 5 minutes to get them out. And while they're in the house looking at it, you could be doing something else. So your actual cost is minimal. But it's how we do it. And just to be clear, at no point did we get this property inspected. We did not pay an inspection fee to get a formal inspection done, because for a wholesale transaction, when you're selling to an investor, it's a waste of money. Because if I'm buying your wholesale transaction and you show me an inspection, I'm going to assume that that inspection is tainted, that it's a friendly inspector who isn't going to give me the real deal anyway. So you wasted your money getting me an inspection. So I stopped decades ago, or at least years ago, I stopped providing inspections. I will give them I'll show them pictures, and I'll give them a rough idea of what I think the repair costs are based on the pictures. And so you did ask the seller questions like, how old is the HVAC? How old is the roof? So you had some sense for how old things were, which is a pretty good indicator of whether or not they need to be replaced. But our expectation was that each investor was going to go in at their appointed time, do their own eyeball due diligence, and then if they needed to get further due diligence with a formal inspection, they can do that once they sign a purchase and sale agreement. We did have somebody come forward. Actually, we had a few people who made offers, but we ultimately got somebody to come forward who saw the property through an inspection that he did through you, not through me. And he came back to you and said, I'm interested in the property. And what happened next?
Was that the actual buyer that bought it, or?
Yeah, but okay. Let's get to that guy, because
So funny thing is, he actually was interested a long time ago, but I told him to sit tight because of the issue with the tenant. You know, he had his price; he was ready to move forward. And then once that was taken care of, I came back to him and came back to all of you. We started marketing it, and he actually signed the agreement by based on only the pictures. I don't think he even saw it. He saw it after he actually signed the agreement. So once we agreed at the price, he signed the agreement within 35 minutes. Signed the agreement and sent it back to me. The very next day he sent the EMD. And then actually that same evening after he signed it, that's when he sent his team over there to see the property.
Got it. Beautiful. So in the case of this, so we got offers for less than what this guy had asked for. And we got people who told us that it needed way more work than we anticipated, and that it had structural issues so we got some feedback from the people who took a look inside and outside. We took that feedback and we made some adjustments to the price, because the original asking price we had was for 80, correct?
Yes, 80,000. Yep,
80,000. It wasn't flying at 80. People were complaining that it had more issues than we were aware of, which is fair, because even though I saw the inside, I didn't spend an extensive amount of time doing an inspection of the property. I came in, I put the lockbox on, I took a quick look around, I took some pictures, I took a video, and then I got out of there. So my opinion of the property didn't matter. Souley's opinion of the property didn't matter. What matters is the opinion of the people who are going to actually buy this thing. So them seeing it and giving us their feedback was invaluable, and that's exactly what they did. And the only reason why I met the first two people was because I'm new to the Tulsa market and I wanted to meet face-to-face some investors. If I didn't, at this point now, for example, I've met enough investors here. I don't need to meet any more. I would do this the way we were doing it for vacant properties, which is we put a lockbox on and we just walk people through the private inspections by appointment. So our guy takes a look at the property, decides that he's willing to move forward. He makes us an offer of 70.
72, I believe.
72? Yeah, 72.
Yeah,
Thank you. We adjust our numbers. It's less than we wanted, but again, this is our very first deal. And so, it was more important to us to get it done than to try to squeeze an extra nickel or dime out of him. And we want the relationship because it might come in handy later. And of course, it definitely did. Seller is eager to get this thing closed. Investor is eager to get this thing closed. Souley identified a title company that we could work with. We explained to them that we were going to be doing a double closing. which they had no problem with. We gave them the two contracts, the one between us and the seller, one between us and the investor. They opened up two separate escrows, and we scheduled, or they scheduled a closing date.
Yep.
Neither Souley nor I attended the closing. They sent Souley documents. They did what's called a mail away. So they sent him, in anticipation of the closing, they sent Souley a bunch of documents that he had to sign. How was that? I mean, other than a little bit of back and forth, but
it was a little bit back and forth because of misspelling and things like that. But besides that, I believe I only spent like I spent $5 to notarize the documents because and just get it sent, because the title, they actually sent you what's already paid for. The document is already paid for, so you just put it in an envelope and you just ship it. So I only got it notarized, and I just paid for a scan so I could have a copy of the documents. It took like 20 minutes. It took 20 minutes. That's it. Besides, other than the miscommunication about the misspelling and things like that. But besides that, it was very easy and very quick.
And at no point still have you met the seller or the buyer. You've never seen the house. The earnest money deposit was paid directly by the investor to the title company.
Yes.
You didn't attend any of the walkthroughs or inspections for the property. Nope. You didn't pay for an inspection.
Nope.
And a closing date is set. Mm-hmm. You received the documents. You paid your $5 to get the documents notarized. You sent it back to the title company, mm-hmm. and on the day of closing, more or less, they did the closing with the seller. They did the closing with the investor. They didn't require you to. So just to remind people, we're selling it for 72. We're buying it for 64. They were okay with you letting the investors' funds fund the sale to the seller. So they didn't make you borrow money to buy it from the seller to turn around and then pay off that debt to sell it to the investor. They let you do effectively a dry closing, double closing, which is a big deal. Now, what they would not let us do, because of the legislation that was passed in Oklahoma, was they would not let us submit a marketing agreement that would have split the wholesale fee into two. Half to Souley's company, half to mine. The law that they passed makes that disallowed. Didn't matter. As long as one of us got it and was prepared to send the half to the other party, didn't really matter. Did slow things down. So we sent the documents to the closing attorney. They had the closing. We had it on a Friday, as I recall.
Yes, we closed on Friday, February 4th.
Okay, and the Monday, was it Monday a holiday? Was that the deal?
No, Monday was not a holiday, actually. Well, they sent the wire actually on Monday.
Okay, so they sent it on Monday. So it closed like after hours on, not after hours, after wire hours. Because wires typically have to take place like by 2 o'clock Eastern. Otherwise, they happen the next day. The next day was a Monday, so they didn't actually go out till Monday. I think you got the funds on Tuesday.
Yep.
Okay. Yep. So they sent it. The wire did Monday. You got them on Tuesday, and then that day, as I recall, you cut it in half. You sent me my share, and closing was done. We had what used to be called HUD-1 settlement statements for the A to B, the closing between us and the seller. Also settlement statement between us and the investor. Investor was happy. They got a good deal. Seller was happy. Deal closed. And we were happy because we got a wholesale fee and we learned a little bit more about the Tulsa market. And other than the tenant getting out delay, we could have closed this thing in a month easily. If the tenant if they had been vacant, we could close it in a month.
And the only downside, another downside would be just your double closing. So you would have to be paying the sellers. There's going to be 2 closings. You would have to be paying the seller's closing fees, which was not much, but, it's still, it's still something you'd have to pay because,
Now, just for the record, even if I had done, even when I do, if I were buying this to keep and not wholesaling it at all, we always, as policy, pay the seller's closing costs because we want to be able to tell them, we're going to buy it from you. We'll take care of all your expenses. We did pass on the B2C closing costs, most of them at least, to the investor. So they paid their closing costs. So it wasn't all that different than what it would have been if we had kept it or if we had done it as an assignment. But of course, because we didn't do it as an assignment, we are not going to have to worry and look over our shoulder for the next 10 years, worrying that someone's going to come after us and saying, hey, you were acting like an agent, an unlicensed agent, because we double closed. This is the way that you should always be closing your transactions. So there's no excuse not to do it. If your deal can't support the extra closing costs, you probably shouldn't be doing the deal in the first place. So I'm going to, it is, wow, 5:51 already. I'm going to pause. So that's the deal, right? From start to finish, we're now on Tuesday, the whatever that was, 6th or 7th or whatever, 8th. Souley's got paid, I got paid, sellers got their house sold, investors got a great deal. Other than me getting the lockbox off of the front of the house, which I haven't done yet, everybody's happy. Say something about the seller and the investor after the sale in terms of follow-up.
So yeah, I wanted to follow up with both. When I followed up with the investor at first, there was a little bit of some miscommunications because I did not allow him to close in 2 weeks or 3 weeks because he wanted to save $20,000 of his own funds by using a commercial lender instead of his own cash. And we just told him no, but he was fine. He still closed anyway. So he says that next time we work with him to give him a little bit more time to close the deal, but he'll be happy to take on all of my deals. So in fact, he was asking if I had any more deals. I said, hey, I'll be in touch. In fact, I did actually. He was one of the first people we reached out to when we had our second deal, which that second deal comes in on the seller, Yeah. So when I reached out to the seller, I wanted to ask how the closing went. They were very satisfied. They were happy because it was a debt they needed to pay. So they paid it off. So, that was the end goal for them. And on the top of that, he just handed me another house right there, a second house of his. I didn't even ask. My plan was to actually ask, but he handed me a second house before we got to it. So say, hey, I got the second house. Do you want it? I said, yes. So that same day, he gave me all the information. I believe 2 days after that, we got it under contract. Yep. He said his price, the bank appraised it $10,000 more than his asking price. So he asked the bank appraised it 75. He asked 65,000. I said, done. So we signed it. And in fact, that buyer that Mitch said paid off, he actually sent us one of his colleagues who is actually going to be buying this one potentially. So like that, building that relationship with that seller and then that buyer, both of those people actually made the second deal happen, which we're hopefully about to close in a couple of weeks or so.
Yep. So I hope people got that. And maybe when I do this video officially, I'll put like, some sort of notice so that people can hear it. Because what Souley just said is that the seller gave him another deal just because Souley went back and did the follow-up and checked to see that everything was okay. If Souley hadn't made that call, maybe the seller calls him, maybe he doesn't, it's not clear. But by contacting the seller and saying, hey, how did things go? Did you enjoy this transaction? He got another deal without any arm twisting, without any effort. The investor is now on our list. He's going to be somebody that we'll contact whenever we have new houses, and is in fact prospect number one for this very same second deal that we just got that we're going to hopefully try to close soon. So when I say the fortune is in the follow-up, I'm not just talking about sellers. I'm talking about sellers, investors, contractors. So many people don't follow up that those who do, it's like thank you notes. So many people don't do it that the few people who do it are set apart just because so few people do. So if you just go back to your seller and say, hey, how did this transaction work for you? Even if they give you feedback that you don't want to hear, at least you know that you could do some things better. So they may say, oh, you took too long, or you didn't keep me up to date on how things are going. And that's how you get better. That's the only way that you get better is through feedback. But if you did a good job and they say, oh, I like your hustle, I like the way that you got this thing done, here's another property, then now you're one step closer to building a long-term relationship. And those investors have other properties. We know this investor has at least 4 or 5 properties that in Tulsa that we could potentially buy, and investors know each other. So he may know other people that he can refer, and they'll ask him, hey, did you work with these guys? And he'll say, yeah, I sold 2 houses to these people. They were great. Now we're in now, and now people wondering, how do you build a reputation? One deal at a time, one follow-up at a time, one happy customer at a time. And on the seller side, sellers know, sorry, on the investor side, investors know other investors. So if I bought a great deal and I'm telling everybody how great the deal is that I bought, someone's going to ask, well, who'd you buy that deal from? And if you tell them, then if that person tells them, now they're going to come to you and say, hey, do the same thing for me that you did for my buddy Joe. And now you got 2 people in your buyers list, and then 4, and then 8. And then before you know it, you got people begging you for your deals for first crack at your deals. Please tell me about your deals before you tell anybody else, which I think you had happened to you, Souley. And that's a great position to be in, because the faster you can sell these deals, the faster you can buy them. I mean, if you knew for a fact that you could sell everything that you bought, you'd be buying like crazy, knowing that you can always find somebody to sell it to. So I'm going to pause here because we've covered a lot of ground, and I want to give people an opportunity to ask questions, and I do want to respect your time, Souley. So if you have any questions, now is the time to ask them about anything we've talked about. Anybody have any questions? And go ahead and just unmute yourself and ask it if you do, because I'm not paying attention to the chat.
Yeah, this is Jason. I got a question.
Hey, Jason.
What was the name of that CRM y'all was talking about?
I am recommending people use HubSpot, HUBSPOT, for 2 reasons. One, because it's free. Well, actually, that's not one. One, because it's good. It seems to be pretty good. And 2, because it's free. Because you need a CRM, especially when you're talking about reaching out to 37 or 40 sellers. By the time you get to like 3, it becomes a blur. You forget, at least for me, it does. I mean, what property are we talking about? What address? Is it this street? Is it that street? And trying to keep that in your head is a waste of time. That's why you have CRMs. And even if you could do it for 40, you can't do it for 400. And you can't, if you can do it for 400, you can't do it for 4,000. So at some point, you reach your breaking point, trying to keep all this stuff in your head. Don't even start. Just get a CRM and put the details. What I recommend people do is put the details of the interaction. So in Souley's case, when he tried to contact him the very first time that sent that text message, record that text message because it worked. So, you might want to be able to, oh, someone's coming in late. Wow. You might, they may have said 6 o'clock. They may have thought 6 o'clock Central Time. Oh, well, at least we got recorded. Well, so the idea is that you want to be able to keep track of the details. You want to keep track of the fact that I sent this text message and I got this response, or I sent that text message and I didn't get a response. So you can start to adjust your text message to get better over time. But you can't, if you don't keep track of it, you can't improve it. What doesn't get tracked doesn't get improved. And it's for the Tulsa deals, for everybody that I'm doing these Tulsa deals with, joint venture deals, it is the CRM of choice, because I don't want to have to learn 15 different CRMs. There's plenty of them out there. There's Zoho, there's Podio, there's Salesforce. I mean, there's thousands of them, and I don't care which one you use when you're not doing a deal with me. But if you're doing a deal with me, I don't want to have to keep track of, I don't want to have to learn a whole bunch of different systems. So I picked HubSpot because it seemed to be the most effective tool, and the price was right.
Okay.
If you go to HubSpot.com, you can get a free account, and they claim it's going to be free forever. And that's exactly what I'm using, what I'm recommending people use.
Okay.
I see, Ella, that you just came on. You might have thought that this was 6 o'clock Central. It was actually 6 o'clock Eastern. But
sorry about that.
No worries. The good news is that it's recorded, so I will put it up probably this weekend, so you'll be able to see it. It's a pretty amazing story, and Souley's in the group. So if you have questions, pressing questions that aren't answered here, you're welcome to ask Souley or myself. We're happy to give you the feedback. And there's another analysis of the numbers of this deal in the deal confidence group. This is really more for the the high level, how do you do this thing? How do you talk to sellers? How do you interact with them, rather than the deal analysis? But it's I think we covered a lot of ground. I think it was a pretty good hour, and it is exactly 6 o'clock now. So if no one has any other specific pressing questions, I'm going to let Souley go. Souley, thank you so much for taking the time to have us ask you questions about this deal. This was your and my first deal in Tulsa. It will not be our last deal in Tulsa. For those of you who are thinking about doing deals in Tulsa, the Tulsa market is extremely hot. Properties are going like hotcakes, and rents are rising, largely because of programs like Tulsa Remote. They're bringing tech companies here, they're bringing remote workers here, and so the economy is booming. And as a result, property values and rents are going through the roof. And there's not enough usable rental stock here to accommodate the demand. And so those people who are renting are getting top dollar. I'm paying $800 for a half of a duplex. It's just under 700 square feet, and it's nothing special. In fact, it's kind of in the hood, to be perfectly honest. I don't say it's in the hood, but it's not. It's in a transitional neighborhood, but it is not nearly as nice as the ones that we just sold a couple of weeks ago, and it's duplex. So you know, my landlord is getting $1,600 ish for a property that he probably paid maybe $80,000 for. Maybe he put $20,000 in work. So his numbers are crazy, and he did it without any of the techniques that I would have employed, like seller financing and perhaps subject to and such. So he started putting those things in there, and for a wholesale deal, it's a killer wholesale deal. And for some of these, at some point, when I learn the the Tulsa market better, I'm going to be holding on to some of these. I'm going to be renting over the long. Actually, I'm going to lease purchase some of these. But the market is hot and it's cheap. It reminds me a lot of Atlanta, like 10, 15 years ago. Not the Atlanta of today. The Atlanta today is ridiculously expensive, but it's an undiscovered market that won't stay undiscovered for very long. And honestly, I'm okay with not too many people knowing about it just yet. I'm happy to share it in the group, but I don't want 1,000 people descending on the Tulsa market just yet. I want us to kind of do a few more 100 deals before that happens. Souley, any last remarks you want to make about the deal or about the process or about anything?
No, I think it was pretty straightforward. I think that first deal, honestly, the amount of value I learned was worth more than the amount I got paid for it. And most of it was thanks to you. So I appreciate you, what you did on working together on this. This was difficult for a first deal. I would say this was difficult, but I learned so much that I wish it was a lot more difficult than it was, just because of the amount of stuff you can learn from it. I know it probably sounds crazy, but yeah. So
it was a pleasure working with you. I like working with people who do what they say they're going to do and are persistent and creative. And as I said before, I need more people that I can do deals with. That's the whole point of this. It's a whole lot more fun to take down deals with a team approach than to do it by yourself. And there's some stuff that there's only so many deals you can do. If I want to do 10 deals a month, I can't be the principal in all those deals. It's just too much to keep track of. So, and there are other bigger, more interesting deals that you can approach when you've got experienced people who know the market and who know how to analyze a deal. So, it is a way for all of us to get better and smarter and be able to tackle bigger and more challenging deals.
Yep.
So I am glad that we partnered on that one. I'm glad that we're partnering on this one. And as I said before, as long as you want a partner, I am more than happy to partner with you on deals. And we haven't even started looking at, we've been ignoring, just for the record, we've been ignoring commercial stuff. We've been focusing on the easy targets, the low-lying fruit, the mom and pop landlords that have file evictions. But I saw, I think it was December's data. It was a, what do you call it? Gas station that was being, the owner of the station was evicting their tenant. And I thought to myself, I never bought a gas station before. And and I don't want to hold it, but I wouldn't mind wholesaling it to somebody. And it's a tired landlord. And, you know, I at least want to have the conversation and see how far that deal can go. There were a ton of commercial evictions there that we typically ignore. The majority of the evictions that took place were commercial, not residential. So, and also, just for the record, there were a bunch of apartment complexes that were filing evictions. And we normally wouldn't pay attention to those because they're apartment complexes. But if you've got a 15 unit or 16 unit and you're evicting half of the people in your property on a regular basis, how much longer can that operator survive if they're constantly evicting their people? So the eviction data is not only great for finding individual single family house landlords who need to sell, it's also a great tool for seeing where you could do multifamily deals, where you can do commercial deals. All that information is there. And if you know how to read it, you can use that to do more deals. So we've just scratched the surface of tired landlord just in Tulsa. I mean, when we've squeezed all the juice out of Tulsa, we'll pick up our show and move it to, if ever that happens, we'll move it to Lubbock, we'll move it to Dallas, or Houston. There's plenty of other places that we can do this. And once you learn how to do it, the how to access the data, that's the easy part. The hard part is getting comfortable talking to sellers and structuring deals and sending out agreements and so forth. So getting good at that is the thing that we're all looking forward to. All right, folks, thank you so much for being here. Souley, thank you for your time to explain to us how it works. If you have an interest in doing joint venture deals, I'll just throw my quick plug here. Reach out to me. I explained how I did it with other people. Souley explained in his own words how he did it with my help for this one. I want to do more deals. I know he wants to do more deals. And so we're not done by any stretch, but he and I are not going to do all the tired landlord deals that are available in Tulsa. The market is way too big for two people. And so there's definitely room for more people. And so if you have an interest, let me know. Thank you for your time, Souley, and everybody else. It's 6:07. Let's go enjoy our Friday. I'm going to go get something to eat because I haven't eaten anything all day and I'm starving. And we'll talk more later on this weekend.
All right. Thank you, Mitch. Thank you, guys.
Thank you
Appreciate
so
it.
much, Mitch.
Thank you. Have a great one.
All right, take care.
You too. Bye.